that stories, there's 1,000 more of those stories than like we bought it and we made it. Dinosaurs. I was just super lucky on Dinosaurs. We pitched it. First place we pitched it, they loved it, and we made it. And I was like, oh, that was easy. Never happened again.
Welcome back to Puppeteers. We're your hosts, Adam Krutinger.
And Cameron Garrity.
And today is a very special day. We have the wonderful Kirk Thatcher. Welcome to the show, Kirk.
What? Oh, hey, guys. I didn't know you were there. I was just on my phone doing important man things.
Well, we're so glad we could interrupt you from that. And Kirk Thatcher, for anybody who doesn't know, is a prolific puppetry director and all things creature designer and just creator. And we are so glad to have him on the show. So Kirk Thatcher, welcome to Puppeteers.
Hi guys, it's been a while.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. We were lucky enough to talk to you about 5 years ago. Before we had any show or anything, we were just actually looking for advice, which is actually a perfect thing to start with, because I noticed online that with what's happening in the world now, it kind of opened up some time and opportunity for you to be able to offer doing consultation for other people who are maybe pitching shows or doing some puppetry work.
Well, it's really whatever they want. There's kind of 2 tiers. The first tier is an hour or half an hour, an hour of consulting about anything one wants to talk about. And it because of the quarantine, but also people have always people have in the last 10 years or so come to me for advice, and I'll kind of offhandedly give them something, but it is like, all right, if you're going to pay me for my time, I'll be happy to. And brainstorm really is what it is. And I learned from the best. Jim Henson would have these charrettes, I think they called them, which is French for brainstorm, or I don't know what it actually means, but we would get together and there'd be as little as 2 or 3 of us. Sometimes it's just Jim and I, or Jim, Jerry, Jewel, and I. Sometimes it'd be 20 people, and we'd kick ideas around. And it was such an amazing process, because of the people in the room, Jerry Jewell and Jim Henson and Frank Oz, but also because there were no bad ideas. There were just things that fit or didn't fit. And that all came from Jim. He would never go, that's wrong, or that's a bad idea. It'd be like, oh, that's interesting. But what about, and you let it kind of spin out. It was this kind of controlled chaos, really, of anybody could say anything. And even sometimes you would make a joke about something, and then the people go, oh, actually, the thinking outside of the box. Like, what's the worst idea? And what's the best idea? And what's the best worst idea? And you just sort of get your brain loosened up just from getting outside of your own head. And the more, the merrier. So I thought, it's fun for me because I love brainstorming with people. It's one of the things I miss about being full-time at Henson. And I thought, well, I've got all this free time. Why don't I share some of the stuff I've learned the last 40 years?
That's awesome.
And it doesn't have to be, it can be just, you want to talk Star Trek or Star Wars or Gremlins or Christine McConnell and just, interview me, whatever. It really is your time that you're paying for. So it's kind of open-ended. I've got 3 sessions booked already. I just launched it this last week, in the last 3 days ago.
Yeah, that's amazing. It's such a wonderful opportunity for people because of those experiences you've had. And I can only imagine those times working with Jim, it must have been more freeing than probably other types of brainstorming opportunities where people's goal is to create a product. Whereas I imagine Jim was probably really just trying to not find something that worked to sell, but something that inspired him, or something that was really fun and made him inspired.
Yeah, it's like, what's a fun idea? I mean, Dinosaurs came about like, let's do a show about dinosaur thinking, and wouldn't it be funny if they were actual dinosaurs? And that's how it started. And it was just he and myself and Alex Rockwell for a couple of the meetings, and then just he and I went off, and mainly to draw. Jim was so visual that and again, as a creator designer back then, he so appreciated visual skills. So, Michael Frith was the head of the art department, an amazing artist. Other friends back in London, John Stevenson, Brian, what was Brian's last name?
Froud.
Well, Brian Froud, yes. There was another Brian who did Muppet stuff.
Got it.
Anyway, he would bring an artist and say, let's brainstorm, not just draw this character, but what's your visual take on these ideas? So Yeah, it was great, and I really learned a lot from that, and mainly it was about process, and that's what the kind of the consulting is. Like, I can help you with your process to get outside of your head, and just be a sounding board from. I mean, I've sold TV shows. I sold 4 TV shows in the last 30 years, starting with Dinosaurs, then Muppets Tonight, then Christine McConnell, and I'm forgetting one. I was like, no, I sold 4. Oh, well, a pilot that I created, an animated one that didn't get to series, but I sold it.
Yeah. Right.
So, I sold it based on my own scripts, based on collaborations, based on franchises that existed, and creating new franchises. Well, actually, Aliens in the Family, I was the designer, conceptual guy in that. So anyway, I know that process. I know how to make pitch packages. I know what a good pitch is. I know how to pitch well. In other words, keep it short and fast, and let them, if you draw them in. Wait, I'm giving this away for free.
yeah. Oh yeah. So don't give away too much. But one thing I might ask, just to give a question that people might have. So obviously you're inviting people to kind of come in and connect with you, whether it's brainstorming or pitching or anything. But let's say someone did want to approach you with a pitch. To optimize their time, what would you suggest that they kind of come to you with if they're looking to pitch something?
That's the second tier. Remember I said there are 2 tiers? The second tier is you send me a pitch of 60 pages or less, or something that's 80 pages or more. Usually it's a script. And it can be a pitch. So there's a TV pitch package and a feature film pitch package, and I think it's $200 for TV, $300, $350 for a movie. But you get an hour of my time, and because it's more expensive, I will read your script, document, deck, and be prepared for that meeting, as opposed to just showing up and having me read it during the 30 minutes or hour you paid for.
Yeah.
So those are the other 2 that are available. And again, I've always said my opinion's worth what you paid for it. So now my opinion is worth at most $300.
Yeah.
You did actually say that to us last time too. Yeah.
I know. But it's really my experience and my look. I've seen stuff on the air that I was like, how the heck did they sell that? Like, I don't get it. I don't particularly look, I don't like it. Doesn't matter. I'm just one person, but how does that get made? So I wouldn't come to me and say, is this a good idea? Because, I might think yes or no, but that's really not here or there. I would say to them, what's your reaction to this? Do you think it's funny? Is it supposed to be funny? Is it a comedy, but you pitch it like it's a drama? Is it, talk about what are you trying to achieve, as opposed to, is it good or bad? I mean, that's sort of like saying, I did this drawing. Do you like it? Like, well, okay, I'll tell you, I like it or I don't like it, but is that helpful? Yeah. So think about what you want to ask, or what, and I even say in so the website, just to do a plug, it's very simple. It's just www.kirkthatcher.com. And then if you want to go straight to booking something, it's backslash, or is it forward slash? Wait, I forget which
probably
it is. It's
forward slash.
Forward slash shop, SHOP.
Yeah, it's on the screen right below your face, actually.
Oh, is it? Oh, wow. Thank you.
Yeah.
Oh!
And again, I can't recommend it to people enough. Again, we were fortunate enough to have that type of consultation with you about 5 years ago. Man, there was so much value in that, especially since we came to you with things that we thought made our package look better, because we showed all these animatics and a lot about our process, and then you were kind of giving us some advice about how they're really more focused on like your process. It's great that you do that, but that's not important for the pitch. They're not going to buy you because you have nice animatics or because you planned it out. They really care about the content.
I'm constantly shocked how little they care about how much homework you've done, except in pitching your story.
Yeah. Of course.
You've got to kind of grab. I mean, I just pitched a story to Disney Plus, and I was told by the executive I work with, is a good friend, they're looking for something family friendly, really focusing on kids shows. They want more. I said, like Disney Channel stuff. She's like, yeah, that's what they told me. So I had a pitch. I tailored it there's kids in it, so I tailored it more as a kids show, like a Disney Channel show. And then we pitched it, and a week later we were told, no, Disney Plus doesn't want kids shows now. They want like 4-quadrant family shows.
Oh, jeez.
So even though, and it's a good pitch, and I said, well, let's go back. Let's bring it back in the way it was originally.
Yeah.
And then I was told, no, they don't really like repitches. So I'm like, that's the thing. It's such a weird business. And also, I use the term star. Let's use a nice term, star fornicator. If you've got a big name attached, if it's either you as the writer, if you're somebody, if you just had a hit show or you have talent, you've got, no, I wouldn't say Johnny Depp anymore, but you've got Bryan Cranston's doing a voice, or he's going to be the human. Yeah. That you're much more likely to sell it, or at least get it developed, because they all want that brand name recognition. I mean, particularly the big, Disney and ABC and NBC and all that. They will take the network still will take a chance on an unknown if you worked on a hit series. If you were like a co-producer on a hit series and you have a great pitch, or if you have a pitch that is about something you personally. They always love personal stories. Like if you were a feral child raised by snakes, the first 5 years of your life, they would love to hear your pitch. Or whatever it is, you live with a family of transvestites, and both your parents are transvestites, and you're a nerd, and whatever. If that's your story or some version of your story, they love that. That's always been a thing. Is like, and every pitch I've pretty much been to, if you pitch your idea and then they go, but what's your favorite idea? What thing like really resonates with you? And I don't know if that's a BS development executive question to make it seem like they care. Because I created a whole story about being adopted and finding my biological family and having them be more of why my personality is the way it is, as opposed to the people who raised me. And, I've pitched it and they're like, oh yeah. And then they say, we've got something similar. That's what you usually hear back. Yeah. Right. We have something similar. Oh, what's that? Oh, it's about a person who doesn't get along with his wife's family. And you're like, okay, but that's, I always say with puppet shows, anything that's got talking creatures or creatures in it, I always hear, we have a talking dog show. You're like, all right, that's not. That's like saying Christy McConnell. We didn't buy Christy McConnell because we had a show with a talking dog. Yeah. And then the other thing you hear. So I'm telling you what you'll hear, even if it's a great idea. I had a show for years, and I wanted to do with Billy Connolly because we became friends on Treasure Island, Muppet Treasure Island. And I developed a show where basically he was a rock star who had a near-death experience on stage in the middle of a concert, and kind of during his death experience, he saw his old bandmate who's like, mate, you're screwing up. You've got a wife and kids. You've got all the money in the world. Why do you you're acting like an a-hole? And so he comes back to be the perfect dad. Of course, he's a train wreck. So it's like, father knows worst. And I pitched it everywhere. And they all said, oh yeah, the rock star dad. We've heard that pitch so many times. I'm like, yeah, but you've not made it. And Billy Connolly, this was like 1996, 97. Billy Connolly's the perfect guy. And he just came off of Head of the Class. And I pitched it, even my agent got me a meeting at MTV. And I pitched it to them, and they kind of went, yeah, we have something kind of similar. I'm like, well, yeah, you're MTV. I figured. And then literally like 2 months later, the Osbournes came out. I'm like, oh, well, that's the only way to trump it, is make it a reality show where you actually have the train wreck dad.
That's right.
He's Ozzy Osbourne. Oh, Sharon! Yeah, so that kind of died, but now maybe it's time to bring that back since the Osbournes have been on.
Okay, well, we don't want to give people too many more freebies, though, so we're gonna
well, I'm kind of telling you what around.
No, I know. I'm just kidding. Yeah. I do actually want to bring back another pitching question toward the end, so that'll be a little bit of candy for people later.
Sure.
But yeah, let's start more with you about how you kind of got involved in all of this film industry and puppetry and creature work.
Oh, geez. All right. The quick bio. Well, I was always interested, probably from the age of 10, realizing you could make a living making. I saw King Kong and I love monster movies, that people did that for a living. Growing up in LA, you saw that Hollywood was an actual workplace. So I really loved creature movies. Again, King Kong was super influential. And then whatever else. I mean, all the stuff you'd see on TV and Saturday mornings and Chiller Theater. And then Star Wars came out, and that kind of solidified that's what I wanted to do. And I wanted to be in the production design, creature making department. So I focused on that. I was self-taught, an autodidact, if you will. And I'd made little movies, and I'd sculpted things. And I met Joe Johnston, who was the production designer at ILM when I was 15, and got a tour and became friends with him and kept working on my stuff all through high school. And a friend asked me yesterday, he said, how many years was it between the time you saw Star Wars and the time you worked on Jedi? It was 3.5 years, which seemed like an eternity. But anyway, I interviewed to work on Jedi in the creature department because I knew how to sculpt, mold, cast, and paint a creature, a rubber mask. And I was cheap. So Joe gave my name as a recommendation. I went up, interviewed, got the job, and that's where I started working at ILM, which was sort of like, I mean, that was film school for me. I'd gone to UCLA for like 4 months and I wanted to be a film major, and they wouldn't let you even touch a camera until your junior year. So I was like, oh my God, I've been filming stuff since I was 12. I don't want to wait any longer. And then this opportunity came up. So I obviously jumped at it. And I basically learned filmmaking on watching the biggest movie of that year get made, Return of the Jedi. I still call it Revenge. Yeah. And so that's where it started. And then, so I was in the creature shop designing and mainly building and painting and finishing creatures for Jedi. And then I worked a little bit on E.T. and Poltergeist. And then I started on Gremlins with Chris Wayless, who had become a friend at ILM.
Yeah, I was looking at that too. You did, what kind of work exactly did you do in that? 'Cause I saw that you did some voices for it. Did you actually do some puppeteering on that too?
Yeah, so I started in the shop, setting up the paint shop and the mold shop for Gremlins, and then I designed their paint job. I remember I painted 3 or 4 Gremlins and 3 or 4 different sets of eyes, and we showed it to Spielberg and Joe Dante, and they picked whatever they picked. And then I set up the paint shop and painted the master one and painted a lot of them. And then, yes, on set I puppeteered for a few weeks when they had the big group scenes. I remember I'd always have a joke because I spent 2 days between Phoebe Cates' legs when she was behind the bar and the Gremlins are around her. We shot that bar scene for like a week and literally 7-8 days. And so I was there with a Gremlin on each hand doing this. And when we were shooting, we would do voices. We'd be like, so they heard and they got some wild lines from me for the group scenes. So when Gremlins 2 came about, I'm jumping a few years, but when the Gremlins 2, I did group scene puppeteering. I didn't build or paint or anything on Gremlins. That was Rick Baker's shop. But I did puppeteer and do voices. So I do a repertoire of the most famous one is, well, there's 2. There's the electricity Gremlin, which was 2 different sounds that they blended together. One was what I call his voice, which was, I need to take a deep breath. So that was his voice. And then there was the electrical, like, undercurrent, pun intended, which was... So they put that together and it created the electricity Gremlin. And then I did Greta, the female Gremlin at the end, which is basically like Miss Piggy after a bender. You know, it's just like... And so actually, here's another plug. So they made Greta Gremlin Funko Pop. So I'm signing those and selling them with my autograph on it for, I think, $60. If you want to, I got to put that up on my website. But so before Gremlins 2, after Gremlins 1, I did some rock videos as a production designer with David Fincher. For a while, we were the 2 youngest guys at ILM. We both started at 18, 19. And then moved back to LA, went to UCLA for another like 2 semesters. And I was in the animation department because they let you touch a camera. As soon as you're in, you can work with the camera. And they also knew that I'd worked at ILM. So they were happy to have me. And, I would just tell them how things worked up there back when you still did hand-drawn road.
I got a quick question about that. When you were at ILM, was that, were you like on staff, or is that like, I'm sure they bring on a bunch of people, extra people for projects too.
Well, ILM back in the day, when I started, there were less than 100 people. In fact, the building still had an auto body shop in one of the bays. They didn't even rent the whole building. Wow. So I was on staff for about 2 years. But you were sort of on staff for a movie because they didn't really they hadn't become a factory yet. Like they had just finished Raiders and Dragon Slayer. And then we were doing Jedi, and I think Poltergeist came in like on year 2. Like the first year of Jedi was just pretty much for the creature shop. Just building and getting and prepping all the stuff. And then year 2 was filming it.
Yeah.
So at the second half, we were done and probably by the end of summer.
Yeah.
Maybe July, maybe August, or maybe June, July. Anyway, we came back and then we were doing Poltergeist and E.T., but it was still like a Spielberg movie or a Lucas movie. It wasn't hey, everybody.
Sure, sure. No, I just know that a
yeah.
lot of people always ask about how to work for a lot of these big companies, and I feel like a lot of the time now, and again, I'm not speaking for ILL.
It's changed. Yeah, it's changed.
Yeah.
Now you kind of, well, now you become like a factory worker. It's less of a gig economy in some ways. Places like ILM, you go and you're a texture painter or you're a modeler.
It's a lot of contractor work, kind of, right?
It depends. ILM still has staff, but I would say 90% of the film industry is contract work because you expand. I mean, it's a gig economy. It always has been. The only time I was ever a full-time employee is when I had a 3 or 4 year deal with Henson. And so I was booked for those 4 years. I couldn't do anything else. Every other time it was like, it went from Dinosaurs to Muppet Treasure Island, and from Muppet Treasure Island to developing Muppets Tonight and Aliens in the Family, Yeah. But since then, since 2000, I've been a freelance contractor. Yeah, that's the tough part, and it depends. You have to have the personality for abject terror of not making any money. Yeah. I've had years where I didn't work for 5-6 months, and I don't have a savings account, so it's juggling and using your credit cards and again, I'm single, so if I had a significant other who had a steady, we're joking earlier about marry someone with a real job or a steady job. Not that what we do isn't real, but that's what a lot of people, and I've had people say, "Oh, I envy you, but I had kids," or I got married and I had a mortgage when I was 22 or something. I waited till I was 30, which I thought was a long time back then. Now I don't see how anyone under 50 can buy a house. I mean, everything's so expensive, and there's just the gig economy. And the other thing is, and I don't not get too political, but the cost of living has gone up and salaries have not. I mean, You can see all these charts online where they're saying middle class hasn't had a financial bump since the 80s, but everything else has gone up. I mean, my house, when I bought it in 1993, was $330,000. I just had it appraised last fall for $920. Yeah. So, but that's what's great about real estate. But if I was 30 now, because I bought my house when I was 30, I couldn't buy my house.
Yeah, right.
I don't, it's just so that's what sucks about being a millennial right now. And I totally understand how if you're under a certain age, just the economy and the way the world works, it's really stacked against you. But also just the heartbreak of being in a gig economy. And I was lucky. I, lied myself with good companies and great people, and the Henson company kept me employed for, 12 years, pretty much, starting with Dinosaurs and going through like the first movie. Yeah.
Yeah. What do you think about?
You have to be emotionally prepared for that.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. It just kind of brings me to another thing I'm just thinking off. I'm kind of veering off a little bit, but like now,
Please.
Because of, obviously, the internet and the world is pretty flat as far as being able to connect with people around the world. Do you think a lot of these shops, I mean, like they're so prestigious, and if you need that, that's where you go, but also it's created a lot more opportunity to connect with individual artists to work on projects. What do you think about that? Is that something you'd recommend to people for trying to work on shows and stuff or projects?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, there's two sides to that coin. Yes, the basic answer is yes. Collaborate. Mm-hmm. This whole auteur thing is baloney. I mean, Spielberg is a good director, but he didn't make Jaws by himself. I mean, there was a lot of people, writers, and everyone loves the idea of like this auteur. And there's a few out there, and not to pick on Spielberg, but all films, all media is a collaboration. No one can hold the boom mic, film it. The only auteurs now are people who are doing exactly what I'm just talking to camera, and you guys. I mean, you're doing it yourself. Whatever, we're doing it, but I set up my computer, you set up yours, and we do it. Anything else is a group project. So, besides the brainstorming part, it's impossible to do it without friends or associates. Yeah. What the hard part again is, and this is inherent in the business, when you come up with a pitch, when people say, because I had to put on my Facebook page, I'm looking for paid writing work, not, hey, I've got an idea if you'll write it. Because I had this last year, 3 projects, 2 of which were established franchises, but not movies or TV series. They said, hey, would you develop this as a TV series? And I said, sure. And the promise is, well, you'll do all this work, and if it goes, you're executive producer. And so I did it, and there was no money. And then 2 of them just went away. Like one guy was like, oh, another producer likes it, I'm going to give it to him. I'm like, okay. Yeah. So you can get people will ask for a lot of work for free. Now, if you're starting out and you need to prove yourself, absolutely do that, because, especially if you're living in your parents' house or you've got roommates or whatever. Yeah. But at some point, I finally realized it only took me 40 years. I can't do it for free anymore. In fact, I just turned down a show where they had the rights to some South American kid show, and it was just kind of dopey. It wasn't terrible, and it was big in the 70s and 80s. Yeah. But they said, hey, if you want to develop this into a show, we'll let you we'll let you work on it. And I was like, okay, well, here's what it would cost. And they said, oh, no, we don't have any money. Of course, this is a company with a development executive, and they bought the rights to the project. So they'll pay the rights for something that exists that's not great, but they don't want to pay me or anyone else to turn it into a hit show or turn it into a show they can sell now. And so I finally just went, I can't do that anymore. I just can't, if I was starting out, I've done it with bells on, but at this point I got to value my experience for something. Yeah. Which is what turned on to the consulting. I was like, all right, well, they can call me and I'll consult them for, charge them for half a day.
That's right. Yeah. Another thing it just makes me think of, because, I think of a lot of people who are, for lack of a better term, makers, people that are in this creators in this type of an industry. There's kind of the two schools of them, people who want to be part of something and people who want to create something. And again, you've kind of done both, and you kind of started being part of something, like you were saying with Star Wars. Yeah.
But you're always part of something. Dinosaurs was a collaboration with the Creature Shop and Jim. You kind of move up the pyramid. Sure. So it's, there's fewer people in the brainstorming or the ideation, but you're always, you're always a part of something. But I think what your question is, not to put words in your mouth, but gosh, Kirk, you're handsome. I think that's what you're trying to say. Stop. Both of you, really. It's kind of, there's a little bit of ego in there, obviously. I want my ideas, but even on Jedi and Star Trek, a lot of my ideas ended up on the screen. Even I got to play a character. I wrote a song. I came up with gags. I wrote dialogue, and it was super. What's satisfying and rewarding as a creator, even though it wasn't a Kirk Thatcher film, and I was associate producer on it, but the thrill of creating and seeing something you worked on get made, even if you're a part of a team, is still for me, and that's just me personally.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah. I guess also, just to boil it down a little further too, it's like there's people that wait for the next project, and also like you can kind of create the next project too. You can try, and again, that's what I'm trying to recommend people to do to do is to create something and create a pitch, and then especially run it by someone like you. But what do you think about that? People that just wait for the next project, because there's something to that. Because some people just like being the foam fabricator. They don't want to come up with the whole idea.
Yeah, there's no and that's more of a steady thing. If I had just stayed a creature maker, there's like 4 shops in LA where I know most of the guys. I could work there and paint and mold and do that. But also I just got kind of tired, to be honest. I got tired of the chemicals. They were pretty nasty back then. It's gotten better. But there's no shame in having a steady gig, man. I know people who are amazing mold makers when I knew them when they started out, and they were mixing plaster that turned into cheese. Yeah. And now they're like one of the top mold makers in the business. So any craft has a certain art to it. There is no completely artless, even computer programming. There's an art to it.
Of course.
There's an art and a science. Yeah, as you guys know, as I'm sure all your listeners know, there's an art and science to writing even. The science is more about English and the rules and what communicates an idea. It's not engineering, but so waiting for a gig to come is, I guess it depends on A, what you're doing, and B, your connections. Yeah. If you're that great mold maker, you're always going to have work. Again, using the Creature Shop analogy, there's, Rick Baker's shut down, but it used to be Rick, and Legacy, which was Stan Winston's, ADI, Alec and Tom, and then Howard Berger, K&B. So people will just jump around. If you're in that world and you're known and you've been vetted by doing a good job, then you can kind of wait, because there's probably going to be another gig. In fact, usually while you're finishing a job, people are putting out the call.
Yeah.
If you're more of a solo creator, such what I'm doing right now is I've got to hustle. I've got to, call people, email people. I have tons of connections after doing this for 40 years, but I went out to friends at a bunch at anime, because animation's still getting written. And I said, hey, is there any work? And of course, everyone was really nice and said, I'll recommend this and that, but it's still been pretty, I've gotten nothing.
Yeah.
Which is why I'm like, all right, I'll consult. But the other part of it is, you're only known for what you've done. Mm-hmm. So I've written animation, not a lot. I did a couple episodes of Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends. I wrote an animated feature. Well, I sold an animated pilot to Fox. It's never got made. I wrote an animated feature for Henson that never got made. But because I didn't work on, The Simpsons, or I did 2 episodes of Foster's, not 2 seasons. I'm not known as an animation writer. So even though I've written comedy and all that thing, because that specific box isn't particularly full on my resume, and also, like, when was the last time you wrote? That's the other thing. You're always your last
that's what I was going to say too. Based on what you're saying, especially with the mold maker for the example, it feels like the more you work, the more you work, right? Because you just
the more you work at one thing, the more work you'll get at that one thing.
Yeah.
If you're a puppeteer and people, that guy's a good puppeteer, they're not going to go, hey, you should direct this puppet show. They'll be like, oh, we need a puppeteer.
Yeah.
I know really good friends in LA here who are great puppeteers. Drew Massey is a really dear friend. And he sold a pilot to Nickelodeon, or at least got the money to develop a pilot with puppets. And people know him as a puppeteer, but he wrote and co-created the show. So I highly recommend doing what you want to do on your side, job. During your free time, as you're making a living doing something creative. Yeah. I think the people I know, and I have good friends who are amazing illustrators, but because of where they live and because they're married and have kids, they have to work at, Staples.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So they at least get free copying.
Yeah.
But, and it really is, it's following your bliss can be really trying. Yeah. And, depression, I've learned that depression is part of being an artist. And I don't mean like I'm going to hang myself, but I mean those moments and those days where you're like, nobody, I can't get a freaking job. Nobody wants me. Nobody likes my special sauce. What am I doing? I should have been a lawyer. I should have just taken a job. And that voice, I don't know if it comes from your parents or just comes from society. I had very supportive parents, but I know a lot of people who don't. And I think to be, generous, I think it comes from a good place. People are worried about it. So many people are like, you can't be an artist. They don't make any money. Even my dad told me all artists are bums and, you'll be living on the streets. And I don't think he thought artists were just guys who did paintings of the Eiffel Tower in Paris, because he was there in World War II.
Right.
So he's like, oh, those guys, they sit around in dirty clothes with smoking chitan going, hey, 5 francs for a painting of the Eiffel Tower. And they had that terrible French accent too, which was weird. But the depression thing, that's part of what I was saying, is you have to be emotionally prepared for the down times.
Right.
And I don't just mean no work. I mean the voices in your head when you're not working telling you, well, yeah, because you're not famous and you're not pretty or you're not whatever. And that's another thing that you have to sort of navigate. And obviously some people have it more than others. I know people who are artists who are very dark and kind of turned inward all the time, and they make amazing art, like genius stuff. But you talk to them, they're like, yeah, it's, I don't know. And you're like, but you're amazing. But the thing is, just because they're making dark art doesn't mean they're selling it.
Yeah.
They put it up on their Instagram, and you're like, that's awesome. If I wasn't an artist, if I had money,
a lot of artists in history got famous when it was too late. After the case.
Cut their ears off. Yeah. It's not an easy path, but it's like every actor that's ever interviewed, they say, I couldn't do anything else.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Well,
and that during this downturn, to finish that thought, I really racked my brain, because people are like, you should do a Patreon. And I'm like, I don't know what to do every month. I'm sure I could figure out something, but I was like, but what value do I have? This is that's why this consulting. I said, I worked in this business 40 years, and I heard myself, hey, you just said you were like, I've learned something. I've learned a lot of things about a lot of things. I would say more of a jack of all trades than an ace at any of them. But because of that, it's and I'm really bad at tooting my own horn, except in private, is that I'm a good sounding board because I've probably been there, heard it, or done it. Particularly with puppet things. Obviously, if you have an idea for a medical show, I'm probably not your guy unless it's supposed to be funny.
What and actually just to connect it back to before, what you're thinking about when we were talking about like the mold maker, it'll get you more mold making work. For you, how did you kind of break out from initially being
I just kept quitting. I just kept leaving jobs.
Because you were like a creature maker, and then you got a job at some point directing. How did that first directing job come up?
Well, that started with when I started at Henson, Jim had a job title that very few places have. I was a brainstorm guy.
Yeah.
I was specifically a puppet designer.
Everybody's thinking thinking, I want that job.
Yeah, I know. I didn't know it was a job. Jim just said, Jim met me after Star Trek 4, and because we had a mutual friend, and I showed him a bunch of ideas. In fact, an idea that I'm still pitching because he loved it. He just had done something similar that year that never got made anyway. But anyway, he said, "Do you want to? I would like to work with you." I said, "That'd be awesome." So I started freelancing. I worked on developed a couple shows with him, brainstorming. In fact, my first trip to New York, I went to the 117 East 69th Street, and on the second floor, there was this room that was like 40, 50 feet long with a huge mahogany or cherry wood table in it that seats like 24 people. It was huge. And he would just fill it with, Jerry Jewell, Frank Oz, and a couple writers, and Michael Frith. And he brought me in and say, "Everybody, this is Kirk. He's going to help brainstorm." And so I was kind of like, have I died and gone to heaven? I mean, and I always am dumb enough or bold enough to throw out ideas. I mean, that's always been my strength or weakness. I don't have a good filter, but it paid off there because, I was silly and Jim appreciated silliness. And nobody there. The other thing is, and this is important, he'd set up a corporate culture where ego didn't really play a part. He wasn't a leader by telling everybody. He wasn't like our current president. "I know everything. I'm the best. I'm the best puppeteer." He was more like, "That's a fun idea. Let's talk about it." And then he let people talk about it, and he would just kind of go, or "That's neat," or and then everyone would write notes, and that was a brainstorming. So I was like, this is amazing. I'd been at smaller versions of that, say at Lucasfilm, with just in the creature shop where we'd throw around ideas for creatures, and but maybe that was a couple weeks out of a year and a half. Where this was like once a month, we'd have these brainstorms. So anyway, I worked on that thing, and then he asked if I'd move out to work on this Jim Henson hour, and I did. And so again, I mainly was an idea guy who drew.
Yeah.
So he liked my ideas, and some of my ideas turned into sketches, but I wasn't a writer at that point or a director. But I designed a bunch of characters for that, and then just brainstorm with Jim. We brainstormed the whole opening. That was he and I brainstorming that opening to the series. And the first directing I got to do was on the Jim Henson hour, Lighthouse Island. I did second unit. So we'd go off and shoot inserts of this and that. We did the mermaids and some creature stuff. And that was fun. And Jim was very happy to let me do that because he asked me, "What is it you want to do?" I said, "Well, at some point I'd like to direct. I like to write and direct." And then I moved back to LA. I worked at Imagineering. I worked on RoboCop 2. And I was just freelancing again with Jim. I didn't want to be an employee with nothing to do. I felt bad. I felt like he was my friend. I'm like, I don't want to take your money just because you want like me hanging around. So Imagineering and RoboCop 2. I think it was RoboCop 2 and then Imagineering for almost 9-10 months. And then while I was in Imagineering, we started brainstorming Dinosaurs. So I flew out to New York a couple times, brainstormed. I started doing drawings, and then he passed away. So at the time, I was consulting at Imagineering. I wasn't an employee. I was a consultant on this redo of Tomorrowland and also on some of the Muppet rides they were developing because this is when Disney was going to buy the Muppets. And that all fell apart, but Dinosaurs, ABC liked it. So pitched Dinosaurs. We sold Dinosaurs. And
how many seasons was that?
4 It was 65 episodes.
Okay.
It was like 4. Yeah, it wasn't. I think it was 3 full seasons and a half season because we started as a springtime replacement with like 12 episodes.
That show was my childhood, like big time. Oh my god!
I hear that a lot, and people are very angry about the last episode. Or very not angry, but sort of like, man, that really bummed me out. I'm like, good.
Yeah.
because we're heading in that direction.
I remember watching that episode. I'm like, that's it. Wait, is it? Are they gonna explain it in the next? No, that's it. Oh,
that's it.
Oh, okay. It all kind of ended.
They didn't. People are like, you killed them off. I said, you don't see them die.
Right.
My pitch for the new series is it's 25 years later, and the baby's living in the basement, and he doesn't have a job because there's no work.
Oh, that's great. Oh my god.
And they're starting to wear sweaters, and Robbie's got a kid, and he's an activist, and Charlene is still a material girl who's dating some rock star. And Earl's retired, and he sits and just yells at the TV. And but it's getting colder, and mammals are getting bigger. And they talk about, mammals moved into the neighborhood. What the hell's that?
Oh my god!
And they're walking around going, I feel great. And the dinosaurs are. So
who owns that? Is that still
awesome.
ABC?
It's a Disney Henson co-ownership, I believe.
Okay.
I don't know.
Oh, they gotta bring that back. That'd be great for Disney Plus or something.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, people are the it's like Fraggle Rock. They've been trying to get a. But Disney doesn't own Fraggles, but
Right.
I think they own a controlling interest in Dinosaurs, at least 50%. A lot of people have been asked, but I think it's been on Hulu. Someone told me.
Yeah,
have to check it
it's
out.
on Hulu, and it's funny because I recently saw a BuzzFeed article that called it the show that most
right.
encapsulates the current period
To
that we're in.
today.
Yeah,
We were ahead of our time. Well, because you could
Absolutely.
see the writing on the wall.
Yeah.
But Richfield is somebody did a mashup with Richfield and Trump, saying like,
yeah.
"I'm the greatest," and Trump, and it was frightening how close. It was like The Simpsons, where they predict stuff. We
Right.
predicted, the rise of Trump.
absolutely. Have you also seen? There's I think it's Funny or Die does a weekly series called A Very Special Episode, where they basically just summarize in like 5 minutes or less a classic like 90s or 80s sitcom, and it's always like the one where they tackle drug overdoses or someone dying or whatever.
Teen
And they
suicide,
did one
yeah.
of the episode where the Robbie goes on the steroids or whatever. It was hysterical, and just to have that
right.
condensed was really good.
We did a couple very special. We did the drug episode, the Happy Plant, where they eat it and they feel really good.
Oh, I
and then
remember
at
that.
the end,
Mm-hmm.
Robbie talks to camera and says, "Hey kids," and he's
Oh
trying
my
to be
gosh.
groovy. It's really stupid. But to finish your question, so Dinosaurs when I started writing, and I wanted to direct, but then I got sucked up into doing a Muppet feature, which with Jerry Jewell, which I would not have passed up if you paid me more to be on Dinosaurs. So I went off and co-wrote Muppet Treasure Island.
That movie
then-
was like my first real exposure to the Muppets.
It's a good movie to start with.
It was, yeah.
Adam, because of that movie, Adam didn't know what Fozzie Bear's name was until he was in college.
I didn't.
Oh my God! You thought he was what was his character name? Not Squire Trelawney. Was he? Oh, he was Trelawney.
I remember
Was it?
Mr. Bimble. I was like,
Yeah.
oh,
Yeah,
it's
Mr.
that
Bimbo.
bear with Mr. Bimble on
So-
his finger.
Yeah, that was me. That movie has the most my kind of writing in it since until Christine McConnell, I guess. With just that absolute silliness. And that's what I loved about I wasn't a huge Muppet fan growing up. I loved Sesame Street because I was like 6 when it came out. And I thought it was fun, but grew out of it. But I loved the Muppets. And then I thought the Muppet Show was great. I wasn't obsessed with it because I think it came out when I was like 15 or 16. I was more into Star Wars. But I loved the silliness of it. And then with the launch of the movies, it became more about the personal relationships and are Piggy and Kermit going to get married, which to me is like, okay, we've covered that a million times. I missed the nuttiness. So
There's one line. I was wondering, was this one of your lines too? The big, fat, ugly, bug-eyed, baby-faced.
Yeah, that
eating
whole
O'Brien?
run.
Yeah.
Old Tom Dead, really old Tom Dead. That run is, that movie, anything that's ridiculous or silly comes from me. Jerry Jewell loved it and was very kind and letting me be as crazy as I was. And he's, all the heart and all the charm. And I was all the silliness. It was sort of like a Monty Python writer working with, how would you typify Jerry? Just the sweetest guy.
Yeah.
I just remember eating O'Brien being like, what?
Yeah, big fat ugly bug faced baby eating O'Brien.
Yes, that's
It was
right.
beautiful.
I was like, what the?
And then Angel Marie was the big fat ugly bug faced pirate. All that stuff. Polly Lobster,
Mm.
Clueless Morgan. All that stuff came from my weird brain, because that's why I like the Muppets, because Christmas Carol had done really well.
Yeah.
And I liked it, but I thought, oh my God, it's so twee. It was very charming and sweet. Yeah. And there's little bits of silliness, like the rats really helped because it's a very charming, sweet, kind of dark story. So I said, after that, let's do I was the one who pushed for Treasure Island. I said, let's do a big rollicking adventure with, completely craziness. And they were listening. And I remember the other idea that was kind of almost given the same amount of respect was doing a King Arthur kind of thing. I said, but the problem with Arthur is he basically is pitted against his best friend for screwing his wife. And how do you do that with the Muppets? I mean, it's like, Fozzie is Lancelot and he wants to date. I mean, it's just such a weird, you could do knights and dragons and stuff, but if you're going to do King Arthur, that's the story. So I said, Treasure Island's great. It's a bunch of crazy characters off on an adventure and nobody's, killing anybody. I mean, they strand Long John. They don't even kill him. And they rescue a maroon. So our first draft was completely banana pants, as I like to use that term. It ended with a giant tiki god coming out of a volcano and chasing everyone down to the beach. It followed the story, but sort of took a left turn. I said it started like Treasure Island, ended like a Hope Crosby picture. And to me, that's what the Muppets are. They're always the Muppets. And the last two movies have been the Muppets being the Muppets today, which to me, and again, this is my personal opinion. I know other people love that. And, I've fans have said, I just want a show about the Muppets living in a hotel or, in a big house like they were in Muppets from Space. And to me, I think they're better as Monty Python. That's how I view them. Yeah. As an ensemble group that I want to see do a Western, a spy movie, and a sci-fi movie. And we've done...
You're speaking my language, because those are the ones, again, like I like the Wizard of Oz. I love when they created a whole world.
Right.
Thank you. Yeah.
It's fun because it's their take on something we've already seen.
Yeah.
My big pitch right now, and I've talked to Marvel about, is doing a Marvel Muppet mashup. I just keep calling it the Muppet Revengers, where we do an Avengers movie with the Muppets.
You and I will have to talk after this, because I actually have a pitch for a Muppet movie that I've been working on in my head, and it involves them getting approached by a Bob Iger type to create the Muppet Cinematic Universe. And it's kooky, but I think that's
my quick pitch is Doctor Strange, because he can change universes and dimensions and realities. Gets caught up or brings this reality of this Muppet universe to our world, and they're superheroes. And then just have fun with it. Like, it's not... Kermit and Piggy, Kermit could be... obviously, he would be the Hulk. He'd be Banner. And Piggy would be Black Widow, because they have their relationship. The Swedish Chef is Thor. I don't know. It could be stupid and fun.
So great.
But that's what I want to do with the Muppets. But anyway, to finish answering your question. So I was writing, and then I started... Well, there was, when did I start? How did I get into directing? Oh, that's right. So I started directing shorts for the Disney, for Henson Hallmark Channel. Probably the more memorable one was the Frog Father, with Kermit as Don Corleone or Don Froglione. Mm-hmm. Jim Lewis and I would write these, and then I would direct them. So I did a ton of shorts. So I cut my teeth filming Muppets on that. And then I got my DGA card doing second unit on Muppets from Space. It was shot in North Carolina. And then about a year and a half after that, we did Muppets, A Very Merry Muppet Christmas. And that was my first full-on directing gig, because I had my DGA card from what I was known for is being fast, because it's shooting puppets, as you guys know, is complicated, and so I'm very visual and have good spatial acuity, so I've always been good at figuring out how to do it without making it sound complicated. And it took a while for people to trust me, because it's like, wow, you're fast. And I just shot an episode of a sitcom last year, just a regular 3-camera primetime sitcom called The Kids Are All Right.
Yeah, that was great.
Thank you. What was fun was, so they brought me in because they kept going over. They were long. They would, have a 36-page script, and it would take them 6 days to shoot it. It was only supposed to take 5. So they said, we want to bring you in because you're fast. And so I shot it in 4 hours less than actually, so you get 60 hours. I shot it in 56 hours. And at first they were concerned I didn't get enough coverage, but they cut it together and it was fine. So I thought, well, great. This is going to be, this is steadier work than waiting for puppet shows to be made. And what the rumor was started about me by a jealous director whose name I won't mention was that I didn't shoot enough coverage because all his shows would go a day over or, 16-hour days. And they were great. And I'm not knocking what he did. He did amazing work. But at some point, and that's the thing. It's art versus commerce. So I kind of get that. I was raised by very solid blue collar. No, not blue collar. My dad was a lawyer. Mom was a teacher. But very, Protestant work ethic. If the job is to get it done in 60 hours, you do it in 60 hours. You don't go, oh, I'm a creative genius. We had stuff that, because we shot a lot outdoors and there was airport was shut down. So planes were flying over like every 2 minutes trying to shoot outdoor scenes. And I was just rushing and pulling my hair out, trying to shoot it in a way that you could cover it quickly because we were running out of time. So I've always prided myself on that. So for all the work I've got done, like we shot Christine McConnell in 18 days, 6 episodes. It's 3 days an episode. And that was a 2-camera, sometimes 3-camera show. That's most shows like that usually take 5 days.
Yeah.
So we were shooting it almost 50% faster.
Wow.
And Christine was great, but she had a lot of time, half the show or probably 40% of the show was her talking to camera, making something. So that took a long time to shoot because she was making it. We would cut steps and bring in different things, but it wasn't like dialogue. Yeah. So anyway, I have a reputation for shooting things quickly, particularly things that are tricky. It's not.
And not just quickly, but also more inexpensive. Because I remember hearing on Dan and Nate's podcast that Muppet Wizard of Oz was done with very little comparatively to the other movies.
Yeah. Our effects budget was $300,000 or something, or $108,000. That was ridiculously low. I remember at the time I was talking to David Fincher, who had just done Zodiac, and he said that there was an oak tree on a little island in Lake Berryessa where the first murder happened, and it had been cut down. So he bought an oak tree of the right kind and the right size. So this is like an 80-foot drip line, a huge oak tree. He bought it, which right there was tens of thousands of dollars. And then Sikorsky sky craned it 80 miles from where it was, planted it at the spot in Lake Berryessa. So it cost something like $220,000. And it was hugely expensive. And, they shot it at night. You just see the trunk of the tree. And I was like, dude, that was my effects budget to do the Wizard of Oz in, 25 days. So, yeah, and that's, the last Muppet movie was something like $60 million. Yeah. Disney knows how to spend money. They don't know how to save money. And that's why I was like, why are they not? Yeah. I'm your guy.
Well, that's what, do you know they should
give me $30 million and I'll give you Muppet.
They should bring back the cheapest Muppet movie ever made, and they should have you direct it. Right?
Well, that's my joke. When they don't have time or money, they call me in. When they have $60 million, they bring in, James Bobin, or Josh Gad or whatever. When they have tons of money, because again, that's what comes back to my star fornicators. If you're a big name. And Bobin wasn't a huge name, but he'd just come off Flight of the Conchords, so they thought, oh, he's good with comedy, and he was. But he didn't know how to do it quickly and cheaply, obviously. Yeah. But that's the thing. Nobody cares. I pride myself in being on time and on budget. I will say 95% of the time. Sometimes, life happens. But the producer cares. The line producer cares. But at the end of the day, if it's a crappy movie or whatever, then, nobody's going to say, well, he did it on budget. You don't watch a bad movie and go, well, they kept to the budget. So it's always that push and pull of both sides of your brain, trying to be responsible, but also trying to get something that you're proud of.
Wow. Definitely.
But again, the Muppets are not, I didn't create them. I just kind of service the franchise. So Christine McConnell, in terms of shows, is more my sensibility than Muppet Treasure Island. That's kind of where, again, because I was given the Muppets, whereas Christine McConnell, I created a show around her, with her. And so it obviously has her taste, but her taste and mine are very similar, kind of dark comedy and silliness.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it was such a fun show to watch. I'm curious though, because aside from the virtue that you can get things done quick and on budget, we've heard from a lot of Muppet performers, those who've spoken with us as well as in other interviews, who really consider you the consummate Muppet director. And I'm wondering if you could explain.
Really? I thought they were going to say I was a jerk.
No. Well, they said that too, but.
Oh, okay, good. As long as they're being honest.
But can you quantify? Do you think what about you or what you bring to a set that would make someone who's very close with the characters to say that?
I think, yeah, I'm really flattered they said that. I'm a little surprised, but it makes me happy because I try to be. I think it's probably a combination of a bunch of things. I started on movies. I mean, Jedi's a puppet movie. Gremlins is a puppet movie. Yeah. Star Trek, not so much. Star Trek 2, I puppeteered the dog. Or Star Trek 3, I puppeteered the dog, the Klingon dog lizard. So I knew puppets and what it was like to perform them, and then Gremlins 2. And so I had that baked into my skull. And then working with Jim and Brian Henson, really just you everything you approach already has puppet style baked into it, where most directors come in and they go, I want to do this and this and this. And you go, okay, we can do all those things, but that's going to take 3 days and we have 3 hours because you want to shoot it and make it look like people. I said, the first thing nobody cares about is puppets' legs. Unless they're kicking something or sitting in a chair, nobody goes, I can't see their knees. But so many people are used to what they call like a cowboy shot, which is like from the knees up, that's a medium wide shot. And you're just like, no, you're medium wide shot. And your close-ups can't be here because then you see the paint chips on the eyeballs. So things that you're normally, I remember on my first Muppet movie, Very Merry Muppet Christmas, the camera guys, great camera team, but they're used to shooting, obviously, people. Yeah. And so they do these close-ups where they cut off the top of Piggy's head. I said, we can't do that. In a dialogue scene with Kermit, and they're like, no, this is what they like in TV. I said, but then when you cut to Kermit, he has no top of his head. Top of his head is eyeballs. So you're going to go from this to this to this to this. It's going to look weird. It's like, why are we cutting so close on Piggy? Also, you can start to see literally the texture. I mean, this is when high def was coming in. Mm-hmm. You can see their eyes are felt disc glued to painted, piece of
cracks
plastic.
In the foam at the mouth and stuff.
Yeah, exactly. I said, you can't do a Muppet close up like this. You can be like this. And also their movements aren't subtle. Like if you're in a Muppet close up, if you're this big and he goes, oh, it's suddenly you realize he's just bopping a head around. So stuff that other people have to learn on set or by doing, I just kind of knew from building puppets, designing puppets, puppeteering puppets, and then directing them in little. So I guess that's why. Also, I know the performers. I mean, a big part of it is I can talk shorthand with them, and they know they can pretty much tell me anything. Sure. I remember and it's good and bad. I remember Dave Rudman thought I was trying to kill him in the last thing we shot because there was a stunt, and he's like, it's not safe. And I'm like, it's safe. I'll show you. And he got really upset with me, and I'm like, Dave, I would never do anything that would hurt you. But again, we were under all this pressure. We were doing it for a lot in a very short amount of time. But they can tell me to go jump in a lake if they want to too. So there's something about kind of being family that I think helps. Yeah. Whereas at any time, because they're an ensemble, anytime you go, even when I directed Kids Are All Right, that was an ensemble. They'd made 9 or 10 episodes at that point. So they were, the actors and everything are a group, the crew were a group. Luckily, I knew the DP and the producer and some of the camera, most of the camera crew, because they had been guys that done the Muppets. But it's always that weird thing of like style and taste and even your working relationship with your talent, whether actors or puppeteers who are basically actors with their hands. So I think that's the other thing is I just know everybody and know what their strengths are and how they like to work. Some people are, like complete machines, like they can just do a take over and over and over again and nail it. And they're really technical. And some are more like in the moment, like they're like method actors and they'll give you gold, but it's 5 different takes, 5 different times, Yeah. So what's the best way to deal with that? I remember, again, to bring up David Fincher, did I drop a name? He was talking about Zodiac and how he wanted to shoot it and how he ended up shooting it. And he said Robert Downey would nail his takes. He's like one of those guys who's just technically proficient and perfect. He said by take 3, he's bored and he's ad-libbing and doing different stuff because he's trying to keep it fresh as a performer. Jake Gyllenhaal didn't even get his lines right till take 4 or 5. So I finished. He said, I said, so you had to shoot it in singles. He's like, yes. And David Fincher does not like to do just crossed overs. He's like, everything is beautifully designed. And so it kind of drove him nuts. But that's part of the job of being a director, is not just like, well, here's, it's not like Hitchcock. Well, shoot the storyboard. I'll be in my trailer. It's like, and again, I'm not that level at all. But you have to work with your performers and play to their strengths, or else, nobody's going to get the best out of it. And that's something I think a lot of new directors don't think about.
Yeah.
Talk to your actors, prep with them, talk about the scene, what they want to get out of it. Some of them are like the classic British thing is just tell me what you want me to do. I was really nervous to work with William H. Macy on Muppets Very Merry Muppet Christmas, because he to me is one of the best performers of our time. And so I try to anyone who has more than, 5 lines of dialogue, at least have a drink or dinner with them. And so I'd had dinner with David Arquette. We got along great. And Joan Cusack was lovely. So I met with William H. Macy just for a drink at the hotel, because he was only there for like 3 days. And I said, so, do you have any questions? Thank you for doing this. I'm really, honored. We're all very honored. And he's like, no, it seems like it's there on the page. What, how do you want me to play it any particular way? I'm like, just, he's a bureaucrat. He was the head angel of we're just kind of making, he's like, no, I got it. And he was like a dream. I mean, he would just ad lib stuff, but stay within the kind of the parameters. And I was like, oh my God, he was so easy. And then I've worked with actors who are fairly new or literally not actors, they're celebrities. And I'm not going to mention names, but like everything is, why am I standing here? What am I looking at? Why am I can I look there? No, because your eye line looks wrong. Why? Can you fix that? No, because camera, it's funny. So I found that the most professionals, and throwing the British acting school in there, it was just like, how do you want me to do it? Okay. Like, I'll just do it. That's what I do. I'll do the acting, you do the directing. Whereas people who are, and again, it comes from nerves. I'm not saying they're bad people, but inexperienced, nerves, all that. They're like, why would I stand here? Why would I look there? Why am I walking in this door? And you're just like, because that's how we're going to do it. I mean,
yeah.
Especially when you're under a budget and a schedule. If you've got all the time in the world and, you're working with Meryl Streep, and you sit and listen and you work with them. But when they're asking questions and they don't have answers, then you're in trouble.
Yeah.
And they're a Disney tween or something like that. Not to, again, name any names, but
exactly. I'll name names. I'll say that the Cheetah Girls were the worst. Were the worst I ever had to work with.
Was that for Studio Disney or?
Yeah, I remember that.
It was a dumb idea, and they just didn't really want to be there, which I get. But they were very unprofessional. They were literally like this until I went, action, ladies, action. Oh, and it was just like, it's just really unprofessional. And they were all, they're all in their late teens. Yeah. And I think they thought they were going to be the next Spice Girls. Mm-hmm. And so they weren't bad people. They were bad. They were unprofessional. Yeah. I don't think I've ever worked with anyone who was a bad person. Yeah. I think either due to nerves or just they didn't give a crap. They were not professional.
Right. No, that's a couple of things I'd love to respond to. I think, first of all, going back to the sort of cohort and what you were talking about, where the Muppet performers are an ensemble. I think having someone like you to be able to come back and know all that really harkens back to a time where it was Michael Frith and Jerry Jewell and Frank and Jim and all those people, those familiar people, where you don't necessarily have that because of the, I don't know all the inner workings of the Disney version of the Muppets, but they don't quite have we would love to hear it.
And this is my biggest frustration with the corporations now. Nobody has creative people on staff, and look, they have development executives, but development executives are frustrated writers who don't write. Mm-hmm. It's like, I'm not an artist, but it's like the classic art director. Everyone is an art director. I can't paint or draw to save my life, but I don't like that there. Well, what do you want? I don't know. You're the artist. And what was great about Henson's and Pixar, well, I never worked at Pixar, but I have lots of friends there, especially in the early days. Both companies were run by artists with artists. The management was smaller. And what's happened, and Pixar to some degree, when Disney took over, is they grow management and they thin out artists. Because they treat artists like batteries or crayons. Oh, I'll just get a new one. Oh, that's what the difference is. Oh, it's a corporation, it's a machine, and artists are considered what's the term they use in the industry? Not
disposable.
Disposable, yeah, that's not what they call it.
Oh.
There's a term they use for things like gaffer's tape and all that. But I'm sure I'll think of it tonight, and I'll wake up in the middle of the night and go, "Oh, okay." But they're not disposable, but they're replaceable. In other words, they're like batteries.
Yeah.
Oh, we've gotten all this out, so they don't keep a core creative team. Pixar still does, but Disney doesn't have a creative team. They just bring everyone in, and it's been sort of like, who wants to work with the Muppets? Oh, you're a big name. Come on in. What's your idea? And at least now, to their credit, they've started letting at least the performers, after it's developed, read the idea, read the thing, and then get their take. And they'll either say, that's not the Muppets.
Yeah.
And so, but even the performers aren't on a full-time thing. They're just freelanced, I mean, they might have a contract with Matt and Eric to do Current Pig or something, but most of the other guys, as far as I know. So, and even if they are, they don't use them as a brain trust except after the fact. Or it's, we've hired this guy and he's famous and he's going to develop a show. Great. Can we be a part of it? No, don't worry about it. We'll send it to you when it's done. Yeah. And then they send it when it's done. And they're like, well, I wouldn't say that. They wouldn't do this. This is not us. Yeah. And then the famous creatives are like, well, the Muppets are hard to work with. And the Muppets are like, well, why don't you just call it, the Skippy the Wonder Frog and do your own show, because it ain't the Muppets.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Jim would bring in writers for the movies. Like Jerry Jewell didn't write all the Muppet movies. And he would bring in outside directors. So they're continuing with that. But Jim also had a core team of puppet builders, designers, the Michael Friths, and Frank Oz. He had his own brain trust that would respond to that. Yeah. So now Disney, and again, I'm not knocking it. I understand it's the corporate mentality, but the complete difference. And again, Jim was such a unicorn and so amazing in that way. He wanted to keep me on after the Jim Henson hour, even though there was no work, but he just liked having a core creative group to brainstorm with and all that. And I felt bad. I'm like, I don't want to take your money, and New York's an expensive place to live, and I'd rather do other jobs and add to my resume and work for you whenever you have something.
And there's a good example where that doesn't work, because even with the new Star Wars series, it's pretty clear that there wasn't a through plan or the same creative team the whole time, and that's a great example that can show you where that value is when you do use it.
Well, and it's expensive. I think part of it is companies, when you've got a bunch of development executives become the creative team, but they're reactors. They're not creators, and there's nothing wrong with that. Yeah. It's a job that I guess is necessary. But what I find frustrating is you have people will develop 20 scripts and make 2.
Yeah.
Well, you're wasting the money on developing things and then what happens is, I've been a part of this, we develop it, and then you get a certain talent's going to play the male or female lead. Oh, well, now let's rewrite it for them. Oh, they backed out. Okay, now this director's going to do it. Okay, he wants to take it in a different direction. So why were we developing it to this point where these 2 development executives or this development executive liked it, since they're not going to make it? They're just an opinion.
Well, and then they get fired, and then the whole project goes away.
Yeah, and the whole thing goes. Yeah. So, and that's what happened with my script for my pilot episode, my pilot animated series at Fox. I developed it, and the guy was my executive who loved it and championed it and got them to pay me for it, got fired, and the whole thing just went away. Yeah. And you're like, but it was good.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that stories, there's 1,000 more of those stories than we bought it and we made it. Right. Dinosaurs. I was just super lucky on Dinosaurs. We pitched it. First place we pitched it, they loved it, and we made it. And I was like, oh, that was easy. Never happened again. Well, yeah, I guess Muppets Tonight sort of was that way too. We pitched it and they liked it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's frustrating, but I think my biggest frustration, again, I'm not, and there's great development execs too. There are people who really get it, and usually they're people who were writers or animators or something, who came up through the process. They're not just, they don't have an English degree from Yale or something, and they're like, I know comedy because I read Shakespeare. And you're like, okay. Yeah. And that's frustrating, for me at least.
Yeah.
And particularly if it's outside of the box stuff.
Right.
which is pretty much where I live. I don't do shows of like, it's a mom and a dad, she's Italian and he's got one leg. It's called Not One to Stand On.
And the children are all feral snakes.
Yeah, exactly. The children are snakes. They raise, yeah, exactly. That's my idea.
Yeah.
The idea they buy is an Italian guy with one leg marries, or a guy with one leg marries an Italian woman, and boy is it. I mean, it's like Mike and Molly.
Right.
Great show. Here's the premise: two fat people. They're both fat. Yeah, and they're married. Yeah, and they're overweight. See, you're like, okay, it's not. And again, I'm not knocking the show, but that's about as outside the box as they get. I mean, once in a while, you'll get something like.
The Muppets should do that. They
should
adapt Fat Kermit and Fat Piggy.
It was called Two Fat Bachelors.
Yeah.
But it wasn't Muppets. But I'm hoping, and again, I think cable has proved this. HBO with Game of Thrones, now they're doing. But the thing is, they're going after franchises,
right?
Which I understand. Game of Thrones was a hit book series, and it was a hit TV series. Now they're doing Lord of the Rings again. But there's things like The Expanse, and they're doing other stuff. The Phoebe Waller-Bridge show, Fleabag, totally writer-driven. She's amazing. She, to me, is I don't even know who you compare her to. Even despite the fact that she's a woman writing really smart female-driven comedies and action adventure shows, but she's also a great. I mean, she's one of those people you're like, can we just clone you and have you
just, like one of those magic people?
Yeah, she's literally, and I didn't know her from Adam, and I started watching the other person. So she's great. Is Matt Berry as an actor? He's Toast of London. If you guys haven't seen it, if you like British comedy, Toast of London. You would probably know him if you're a fan of What We Do in the Shadows, the series. He plays Laszlo. He's the guy who talks like this.
Oh,
yes,
and was he was on the IT Crowd too?
Yes, he was the boss. Yes, that's where I first saw him, IT Crowd, and I said, I love this guy. He had his own series, Toast of London, which was about being a British play actor who's horrible, and it was hilarious. And then What We Do in the Shadows, they bring him in. So, but the English creates a lot of genius writers and actors and directors, too. Yeah. I wish I should. Well, my last name's Thatcher, so I'll leverage that.
Yeah. Another thing that I wanted just to make sure that we touched is, so we've talked a lot about, your work behind the scenes, behind the camera, but I wanted to also touch on your experience at the Jim Henson Creature Shop Challenge, because you were kind of one of the figureheads there.
I was one of the judges. Yeah, it was fun. I mean, we had to audition. I had to audition to play me. That was the fun part.
Yeah. Wait, actually, can I ask you first though? Like when you were first contacted about this, like what was the scope of it at that? How much information did they give you, and like what did they?
They just said we're doing a competition show, and we're looking for judges, and it's called the Creature Shop Challenge. I'm like, okay, so we're gonna do a mock-up of a contest with two people, and they're gonna show you what they built. And we're going to have you and two other people. I think it was me and two other Henson people. And then they were trying out different people to do what Gigi did to be the host. And I think Brian did it too. So they're just seeing chemistry. And so I had to audition twice to play myself, which was fun. It was so, but I kind of knew that's all I knew.
Yeah.
That we're going to do that. And I was up to be a judge on it, and when we got the show, and it was really fun. We shot it over 10 weeks, and I got to go in once a week. I think it was Wednesdays or Thursdays, and I got to give. I said it was best. I said I felt like a producer. I gave my opinion and got paid.
Yeah.
No responsibility whatsoever. Just here's what I think. Why'd you paint it yellow? Those eyes are too big. I like what you did with the hair.
Yeah.
Good night. And I got a check. It was a great experience. I'm still friends with most of the cast. Well, really, I'm friendly with all the cast. A few of them I talk to, and Seymour Bobby, obviously, who works full time at Henson.
And we're really good friends with Chaz Vance, who is actually.
I love Chaz.
Yeah, he was actually a guest host on the show before, and I do want him to be a future guest as well. But we're very good friends. He lives locally here.
I feel bad he got booted. I think he still hates me for saying, what did you make? In fact, we were just riffing a little bit on Facebook about that. But no, I love Chaz. I love his outspoken. I just love his edgy.
He's a character, man. He's a very, very
Yeah.
good friend of mine. Yeah.
And he's a good creator too. And that's what I didn't like, and I think I even said this to him. I said, if I had done that show, I would have kept everyone on for all 10 episodes. And then whoever had the most points at the end would have won. Because that to me is this whole celebrity thing of like, you're fired is just, it's so against the Henson ethic. And it was pushed on by the network, and they would think people like that. And everyone I talked to said, God, I didn't care about the winner loser part. I just wanted to see them make cool stuff. And I said, yeah, to me, everyone said, okay, Adam, you won this round, but you lost, Cam, but you're going to come back and get another chance. That to me is really what creativity is about. It's not you lose and you go home and you never create again. So I tried even pitching a show to Henson, and it just nobody wanted it, which would have been that.
Well, and also for a show like that too, I think this is what Chaz was telling me, like a better model, because in a lot of ways it kind of used the Face-Off model, which makes sense for that show, for Sci-Fi's Face-Off. But for something like creature building, you kind of do need a little team. So if you had like 3 or 4 teams of people that got points, like you're saying, that actually got to make a really nice piece. Because here's another thing I'll say too: a lot of the products that came up in that show are probably pieces. I mean, they were very nice, especially for how much time they had. But I'm sure a lot of those artists look back at it thinking, like, man, I wish I could like do that again and to be able to spend real time on it. Because
and the time thing was the challenge,
of course,
really, and it was insane. I was always like, and remember, the producers were always in your ear, and I'd be like, saying, okay, say what you didn't like. And I would say, this guy made it in 2 days.
Yeah.
This is when, they just edit this out, but they'd be like, okay. So I'd be like, that's amazing. I love the design. I think obviously you didn't have a lot of time, but you did it. And they go, okay, well, say something you didn't like. I'm like, there's nothing I don't like. They did that in a day and a half. Excuse my French. They did that in a day and a half. Like I'm amazed.
Yeah.
Well, just say something that you would have done differently then. I said, okay, I can say that because that's more of a value opinion, not really like, I don't like this. And then it's funny. So I was always, they did actually a poll for the fans of the show, and they said, who do you think's the easiest judge to win over? And I won by a long shot. Or like, who's the toughest judge? And Brian Henson got like 60%. I think Beth got like 35%, and I got like 15%. Like, oh, he's a pushover. I was like, yeah, because I'm the guy who did that for a living, and know what these insane schedules like. I mean, Beth did too. That's why she was, but she was better at being more like, well, I see what you did. Who was great at it on Face Off was Glenn Hetrick.
Oh yeah. Oh, he's
and
great.
I met Glenn at Comic-Con years ago. We're friendly, and he was such a nice. He was like my personality. Like, hey man, he's like, and I'm like, God, you're so different on camera. He's like, oh yeah, because he was that guy who's like, Adam, I see what you did with this character.
Oh yeah.
I think your choices for the eyes were successeful, but I don't understand why you did that.
Yeah,
with the teeth.
I'm a huge fan of Face Off. I watch it all. So yeah, I've heard that a lot about him. He's very different. I mean that's the nature of quote unquote reality television.
But that was me. I did not play a character. I was me.
Well, because one thing I'll say too, we talked about this before 5 years ago when we talked too. But I was a semifinalist to be on that show in the casting process. So they flew me to L.A., which my plane ride was a whole story in itself. But But something that happened is like, again, and this is not talking about Henson in any way, but even the handlers, the casting, it's different people. Like they were asking me questions and I'd answer them. And then I was told, this is how you want to answer that question. I was like, oh, okay. I answered the question wrong on my opinion. My opinion was wrong. So I'm like, that's just
there was a lot of manipulation. And also they wanted to see how you'd respond to direction. That whole casting thing, that once I became friends with, because we couldn't talk to the cast members until every show had aired. So we knew these people, but we couldn't email them, talk to them on the phone, or whatever. So once it was over, that's why I say friends with them now. Because, there didn't want to be any hint of favoritism. But they all were like, what they said was they wouldn't do it again because the misery of being sequestered and they were just treated poorly. Yeah. And again, that didn't come from Henson. That came from the production company.
Sure, of course.
And, they're kind of, and then they heard how the Face-Off people were treated, and they were like, oh my God, they got this beautiful house with a pool and all this. They were in a place, I guess, like the air conditioning didn't work, and there were holes in the walls, and I was like, oh well, sorry man, I had nothing to do with that.
Yeah. Well, and just
but it was
all
fun.
the fabricated drama of like the workroom and stuff. It was just like, it didn't feel like the personalities they were creating. You knew that it wasn't like what real puppeteers and puppet builders, how they would really act.
Right. Well, I mean, I think a lot of those personalities came from their personality. I mean, Russ is kind of a big, loud guy. We're friends now. I always joke. I said, you never have to guess how Russ is feeling. He comes into the room. It's like a good actor, an improv. Like you come in with a choice, and Russ comes in. He's like, "Hey man, oh it's great." Or he's like, "Mother flipper," I'm like, there's no in between.
Yeah.
And that comes across, and then Tina is very like in her head and very meticulous, and so she came across as kind of nervous. And of course, they put them together to foment that frickin' frack. And I felt bad for her because she's an amazing artist. Yeah. And because they put her with Russ, and he was pushy and loud, and she didn't like that, and so they kept forcing that to create drama. And to me, that's nobody particularly like that. I mean,
and not only that, to me, that's not like that's not the Henson model. Like, I don't think if Jim Henson was here, or even if Brian Henson maybe had more control over that, or Henson Company in general, like that, I don't think they're about highlighting drama. They're more about the art. I mean, with Jim Henson making of Dark Crystal and stuff, it wasn't trying to fit into the what was popular in the time. He wanted it to display a certain tone of what he stood for.
And there's always creative differences, and that will happen, especially when you're thrown together with team members you don't know. But I think we talked about, we all thought we were going to get a second season because the show did really well. And we talked about what changes we'd do, or what we thought worked and what we didn't. When the one guy left, you remember it was like episode 3 or
Josh,
4.
right? Yeah,
right. Josh left.
I heard all about that.
So I don't even know if he had mentioned it to the production company. He just did that live, and we're all like, okay, we're sorry. That's terrible, And he had the story about his wife being sick or his kids missing, whatever. So we found out later that was all BS. He wasn't married. He just is an odd guy. I don't know if he's a bad person or not, but there was a lot of information that came out about him after the fact. So that kind of pressure cooker they created, and I know nobody was happy in the living conditions. They all said that sucked. But it really took its toll on him, and either he lied to just get out of it, so he wouldn't look like, because I think there was a contract saying you can't just up and quit, but he did anyway, and I don't think they didn't sue him. But so there was some actual real drama that wasn't created by the show. So that was interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. So is that what you said? Because you said about a second season being in the works at first, or an idea of it. So what kind of stuff?
Well, we were talking about what we would do differently, and that was one thing that we talked about is not play up the drama and make it more. I don't know if they were going to go with nobody gets executed. I mean, we never got that far into it. We were just saying what we thought worked. Yeah. And what we thought, we could.
So do you know why it didn't come up to a second season?
I never know. Yeah. They don't tell me. I'm just a judge on that one. Christine McConnell, they didn't even tell me. They just say, no, we're not going to do it. Even if you create a show that's successful. I was told that Sci-Fi already had Face Off. We were an expensive show because we did the sets and shot little movies with them, where Sci-Fi just had them stand on stage. So we cost more money. And then someone said, no, we didn't cost that much more. I wasn't like, like we were $2 million and they were 800,000. Like we were 800,000, they were 600,000. I wasn't like an enormous. But I think ultimately Sci-Fi just thought we have Face Off. This isn't that different. Yeah. Although most of and again, they're telling me this because I was on it, but most of the feedback we got was we like this better than Face Off.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, again, I would say the biggest downfall of the show is that they made it too close to Face Off. It really should have been something a little bit more different, like you were describing earlier. And I think it would have given it more legs and been more honest to the brand of Henson. I hope it could be reworked and come out again, because I think it also, because I know it was popular when it came out, and then like a couple years later, it came out on Hulu, I think, and it got like a resurgence again. And I hope people keep discovering it, because it was really an interesting.
Well, we had fans in like Czech Republic, like they dubbed it into weird, like Eastern Europe got it, and then Brazil, and so we were getting fan emails a year and a half later saying, "I love the show. When is the second season?"
Oh, wow.
Like, it's not happening. Same thing happened with Christine McConnell. There's huge fans like in Japan and Poland, and it's funny because these cable shows, particularly Netflix, is in 130 countries or something, and they dub it into that language, so it's not subtitled. They actually have people do the actual dubbing. Yeah. So creativity is treasured as content, and I think networks are afraid of it because, again, it's run by development executives, not creative people. And I hate to keep dumping on them, but they're literally not people who've made anything in their lives. Right. It's like somebody goes, I bought a cake mix where you add an egg and some water, and so I'm a baker now. It's like, no, you're not. You basically, and you decided what color sprinkles on it. It doesn't make you a baker.
Paint by numbers.
Or a cake. What's
like
that?
Paint by numbers, calling that art. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, I'm an artist. I did paint by numbers. And they give their opinion, which is or not valid depending on the company. If I'm a producer and I have a development executive who I know really well and they know me really well, and I can't read 6 scripts a week, and I say, just read them and tell me what you like. Now, I would probably the first 6 to 12 scripts read them also and see what they say. Mm-hmm. And I go, no, I actually like that script. So you're not reading my taste right. Yeah. But sadly, that doesn't happen. So a lot of money is spent, and a lot of, just like what happened when I was relating about pitching that show to Disney Plus. Like, I was told this, we tailored it to what they said they wanted, and then we pitched and they said, oh yeah, we don't want that anymore. Yeah. And I'm like, you could have told us, like, if you were, whatever, because the way their life is this. I sit in my chair. It's like being a judge on Creature Shop Challenge. People just come in, they go, blah, blah, blah. They sing and dance. Here's my show. And then I go, I don't like it. Or that's not what we're looking for. Whatever. I get it. That's fine. But, I spent months. And then when they said, well, maybe if, it was a family of squirrels instead of bats, because bats are on the down right now. Like, okay, come back and make it bats or squirrels. And then they go, yeah, we're not looking for animal shows. Like, why did you waste my time? I mean, and again, sometimes they don't know. They're told by the network the last day. Yeah. But it's frustrating. And that's sort of the curveballs. I've always said selling a show is like getting the brass ring or winning. It's like winning the lottery.
Yeah, and actually to kind of bring it back to that, because I know I teased it in the beginning about one more question about pitching, because I can feel we need to start wrapping up soon. Is the question is for pitching is, do people pitch to multiple places at once, or do they try to pitch just one place at a time?
It depends on your management. I particularly just like to go out and pitch an idea to wherever and then let them figure it out.
No, when you say figure out, do you mean like a bidding war type of thing, ideally?
Yes, that's what you hopefully can create, or at least you're not wasting so what happens with actors is we've sent our script to Brad Pitt. Well, you can't send it to Brad Pitt and Johnny Depp and, Chris Evans at the same time. That's considered bad form because, they all hang out at the fancy bar and they're like, oh, I'm reading that too. And they all get pissed off. So with actors, you have to wait. And sometimes, they're working, whatever, you sometimes wait 2 to 3 months to hear back, and that's a no. So that sort of is translated into scripts and pitches. But I tend to not do that. I don't like doing that and waiting to hear back before you go somewhere else. Unless they paid you. If they gave you money for it, then yeah, I would think, you're beholden to it, but nobody pays for pitches. So, like when I pitched to the Disney thing, I asked my producer, I said, well, where else can we take it? She said, I'll make some introductions, but she's tied to Disney, so she can't come in on it. Right. So I'll just go in as a creator. And then, I know production companies, but, again, that's the kind of stuff I can really help with in the consultations, is explain how the stuff that very few books, because it's changed so much in the last few years with Netflix and Amazon and all that, the process of pitching, what makes a pitch good, no matter the content's the content, but a process of doing it so you're not wasting your time or their time. That's the worst thing, is to be pitching an idea and have the executives be like, huh.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, you don't want that.
Okay, and you just know they're going, I don't like this idea. So it's good to know how to read the room too. That's a part of it. So what I try and do is keep it short and fast, and then if they're interested, they'll ask questions.
Yeah.
Like if I told you guys I've got a show about a grasshopper and an ant, and they live next door, and it's funny because the ant's industrious and the grasshopper likes to play all day, but then the first episode, blah blah blah, whatever the pilot is, and then I go, so what do you think? And you might say, oh, we've already got a show with bugs, or we've got a puppet show, and I go, great, okay, well then it's taken 5 to 10 minutes of our time, and haven't wasted it, as opposed to going, so the ant is like Woody Allen. But he's very in his head, but he's also likes to work, and you explain everything, and they're just going, okay, please shut up.
Too much.
Yeah, you don't want to waste people's time with it.
Yeah.
Yes, you want to. I always say get them interested, and then pull them in with humor, pull them in with cliffhangers, and then let them ask questions, because then you can tell if they're like, wait, so when you say ants like Woody Allen or the grasshoppers like Jack Black. Would you think Jack Black is like, oh yeah, he'd be perfect for the voice? And like, oh, Jack Black, we like Jack Black. And again, that's another way to help get their interest is give them, I call it for instances. For instance, right. Jack Black is the voice of the grasshopper.
Yeah.
So yeah, again, that's the stuff I've learned by hook and by crook, and by successful pitches and not successful pitches.
Yeah, that's great. And
I've been told 100 times with shows I've never sold, you're so good at pitching, you should pitch other writer stuff, because so many writers are kind of introverts, And I'm like, thanks, I didn't sell my show. But they're like, you should pitch that guy's show that we bought. I'm like, oh, okay. So I'm not really great at bragging, but I've been told that enough. I've been told enough that I'm weird, that I'm happy to say I'm weird, I'm odd. But also that I'm good at pitching, because I've been told it enough by people who didn't buy my pitches, but literally a number of times I said, you should pitch other people's stuff. You should be pitch man. You come in and you sell their idea. So I can toot my horn there.
Well, definitely. And fortunately now you're doing this service of helping people out and develop their pitches.
Well,
so
they're paying for it.
But yes, of course.
It's still help though. Yeah, it's a service.
Yeah, exactly.
No, it's true.
I've got one question that Adam and I were joking before. He was like, the things you want to ask people is just so strange.
Right.
But it's something that
I'm odd. We've already proven
well, yeah. No, but I wasn't sure, and this is a really kind of technical thing. But when you
nerdy thing,
it's but also it's something. It was a legitimate question that I had once when I was I was the soul puppet on a film shoot a couple of years ago, and it was something that the director asked, and I was like, I have no idea. Do puppets typically have, when you shoot the Muppets, do they have their own lighting double? Or how does that typically work? Is that
we usually just put it with the Muppets? We have a C-stand with a tennis ball on it, and we just put it on the tennis ball, and so you've got a C-stand with either a tape ball or something, so it doesn't obviously go through the head, right. And you just put it. You adjust your height for where your hand would be, and that's your lighting double. But we don't have doubles.
Sure. I wasn't sure if you just had to have the performers be there the whole time.
Never. That's just cruel. I mean, they're already working with their hand up, and you know how exhausting that is. So to have them say, "Can you just hold it up for another 2 minutes?" It's like, screw you. Give me a C-stand. I mean, it's not like a special piece of equipment. But yeah, we don't have lighting doubles. We do have things like eye cozies for Kermit and Gonzo, just so if something falls on them or something, because their eyes are delicate with the paint and all that, because it can get scratched or get dirt. So sometimes we'll cover up, like if you had a puppet that had very delicate whatever, you could put it so, because the lighting is just really to see how it affects the felt and the foam.
Right. Yeah.
So no, we don't have, the short answer is no, we don't use lighting doubles. We just put the actual puppet on a C-stand. When you've got these C-stands have just like a rod that comes off, you can hang flags off, you can grip clip stuff too. So we just put a tennis ball, you cut a hole in a tennis ball, put it on an end, stick it straight up, and there it is. Yeah. It's completely adjustable, and that's how we do it.
Perfect.
That one's free.
No, and it's literally it's been one of those things I need to ask someone. When we were preparing for today, I was like, Kirk Thatcher, the perfect person to ask.
There you go.
Something like
perfect that. Person. Any Muppet guy would have told you that, unless it's a secret that I've just given out.
Well, sure, and if
it is.
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
It is good that they were. No, I was saying it's good that they did do that because the puppets suck up light differently than human skin, which is what they're used to lighting.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
It's like lighting a coat.
Yeah. Well, and that's helpful to know because I think on that shoot I ended up just having to keep the puppet up in the air because they didn't even have
that's completely
C-stands and stuff.
I worked on Lazy Town. I directed the first 2 episodes, and I left because it was such a bad experience. But the DP didn't give a rat's about the performers, and he'd like, if you could just hold your hand up there while we're lighting, and I'm like, get him a C-stand.
Right.
He's like, no, it'd just be a minute or 2. I said,
a minute or 2 is a long time.
I literally said to him, you go hold your hand up for 2 minutes, and then perform for 3 minutes. And he's like, it's just they're so delicate. I'm like, they're not delicate. It's freaking hard. And these puppets were foam and fiberglass.
They were huge.
Sock.
Yeah,
they were ridiculously huge and very heavy. And then the other thing he would doing is if he wouldn't frame right, he would say, if you could just get your head out of shot. I'm like, dude, this distance will never change from here to here. They can't change that. They can do this a little bit. And he's like, but it would just be a much better shot. I'm like, it would be a better shot you can't use because you got a head in it. And that's the problem very often working with people who haven't done puppets before. They don't know how difficult and tricky it is. And I remember the puppeteers were like, thank you. Ron Binion, who was puppet captain, he's like, thank you.
Yeah.
Because they were all terrified to say something because they didn't want to get fired.
Right. Yeah.
It was the puppeteers were great. Stefan Karl was amazing, but the creator of that was a pain in the ass.
That's why we need you doing another show now. Well, here's what I propose. I think what the world needs right now is a Kirk Thatcher directed and co-written Disney Plus Muppet series. Because for many reasons, he knows the tone of the Muppets. He's got the zany creative mind for it. Okay, he can do it on time and on budget. Okay, and Disney Plus, there's nothing to lose, right? It's not like
there's something coming out this year called Muppets Now.
Yes.
Which again we shot in very little. We taught 6 hours in 12 days, so it was It was a lot, yeah. And I've heard I haven't seen it since my first edit, but I heard it's cut down a lot. And there's it is what it is. Again, they didn't want to spend a lot of time or money and create a lot of content, so it's kind of like adding a lot of water to soup. Like it's still soup, but it's water. And I haven't seen it, so maybe it's come out great because I know they've compressed it, so a lot of the stuff that maybe wasn't working has been edited out. But that is coming out.
Can you share how long those episodes are supposed to be?
Well, that's what's changed. They were originally supposed to be, there was like 6 series ideas, and then there was about 50 to 60 minutes of content, like 6 episodes for each idea or each premise. I'm told that's been cut way down, and they've shot some new material even in the lockdown. So I don't know. I can't really comment on what it is now, but I know they've been trying to make it work. Yeah. Not that it was terrible. It was just, again, a lot. They tried to shoot a lot of stuff in a short amount of time. So it's not, I would say it's not what you're used to with lots of sets and characters. It's I don't know. Actually, it's hard to say because I haven't seen it. I mean, I worked on 3 of them. I directed 3 of the series, and then the other 3 were directed by different people who worked at Soapbox.
Gotcha.
And Bill Beretta, I think, directed one of the series.
Okay.
Anyway, they're fun. It's pretty much almost reality TV with the Muppets.
Okay.
Which, is
cool.
a thing.
Yeah, excited to see it.
Yeah.
Yeah, can't wait to see it.
But thank you, Adam. I think you should make that a YouTube commercial.
Well, all the Disney executives watch our show. All of them.
Really?
All of them.
Oh, great.
We did recently find out that the people at Apple TV have seen this show, which is kind of cool. So
I would love. Okay, so my pitch is to. In fact, I talked to my producer friend at Disney. Is let's just go create a puppet show for Apple TV because I know they love the Muppets and Disney will never sell to the Muppets. Mm-hmm. So let's create. I just don't know who to talk to at Apple. My friend, the producer, she says, "Oh, I know who you should talk to." I'm like, "Great." She goes, "Well, create a show, create a puppet show and sell it to Apple TV." I'm like, "All right, then I'll build a rocket ship and fly to Mars." Right. I mean, I would love to talk to them because I know they love the Muppets, and now they're doing Fraggle Rock,
right? These
little Fraggle Rock things. So
and they've got the helpsters, and yeah.
It's exactly. They'll be like, "Oh, we've got a puppet show now. We got 2 puppet shows, so we're not looking for that anymore." But they have kids puppet shows. I want to do like the Muppet Show. Yeah. Like I never thought, and I've had that discussion with a lot of people. What The Simpsons broke animation and made it a family adult entertainment thing. And then there was South Park and all this other stuff and Family Guy, American Dad, whatever. That hasn't happened with puppets since the Muppet Show. The Muppet Show is the only, I wouldn't say adult, but not kid show with puppets that ever existed. I would love to create the new version of that, whatever that is. I don't mean the new version of the Muppet. I would love to create the new version of the Muppet Show, but I wasn't involved in the last one. And you can tell.
Yeah.
And again, a lot of good people worked on it, but I thought it was a bad idea to make it. The tone was off.
Yeah. Well, and I will say we heard excellent things about the live Muppet show that you directed.
Yeah, thank you. Everyone said that's what the Muppets are. Why aren't you just doing that? And I said, why aren't we just, let's do a live show every week that's, got canned up, whatever. Yeah. I kind of, to be honest, I've given up pitching to them because they, you're never, the phrase, you're never a prophet in your own town.
Mm-hmm.
I'm Kirk, that crazy Muppet guy. Josh Gad wants to do a show. He's amazing. He did a voice of a Pixar movie that made $1 billion. So, success breeds success. So they went and spent a lot of money and time developing something with him. I come in there and they go, yeah, we know. You like crazy monsters. And yeah. So maybe I will just go to Apple.
Yeah.
Hey, Apple.
Yeah.
I can give you all the performers, all the puppet builders, all the writers. Just it won't be the Muppets. It'll be different characters. Yeah. You heard it here first.
That's it.
www.kirkthatcher.com
and Puppeteers podcast
co-produced by
10%.
Puppeteers Pod.
Yes. Well, of course. Yeah, you guys would. I would definitely let you guys watch the show.
Thank you.
Awesome. Would love that.
Well, you're in Buffalo. Could you be any farther away from? You could be in Hawaii, I guess. No, it'd still be closer.
Yeah. We could do it in New York.
Yeah, that's true. I've heard they've done puppet shows in New York.
Yeah, one or two. And I will say, Buffalo has an emerging film and production industry.
Really?
We actually, right before this lockdown happened, Billy Eichner was just about to shoot the new Judd Apatow movie here. And they shot Marshall and some other things and
Quiet Place too.
Right. Yeah.
But those are all location shows. Do you have a big stages? Not the Muppets need huge stages, but they need good sized stages.
Yeah, I don't think we have that yet. We have some people who are.
That's the thing.
Yeah. Right.
Like you've got to have a minimum 24-foot ceiling because we raise everything 4 feet. So now you're a 20-foot ceiling when then you're going to hang your lighting grid and yada yada yada. So that's one of the things that if you're going to do it, you need a stage with at least a 24 to 30-foot ceiling to really make it work. So that's another piece of advice for all of you Muppet fans out there. And again, just to finish up, you don't have to talk about puppets. We can talk about anything. You can just talk about shooting a show, a comedy. I can read scripts that aren't puppet scripts, but obviously I've been kind of pigeonholed in that, and I know more about that than
cop shows.
But directing is the cop shows. Yeah, directing's directing. It's where you put the camera and how you tell the story with that. But yeah.
Excellent.
All right.
Well,
I'm out of words.
That's okay. Our final question that we ask everybody who comes on the show, in the spirit of Mr. Jim Krupa, if you have a good puppeteer story, something time on set where something wasn't going right, or in a production meeting or something that you were kind of pulling your hair out at the time, but now looking back, you could have a good laugh about it.
Oh, geez. Something sad that now I can laugh about.
Or just like silly or like, oh my gosh, I can't. It doesn't have to be sad necessarily, but.
Oh, okay. This is silly.
And you could throw anybody under the bus you want.
Well, that's what I don't want to do.
No, just kidding.
It wouldn't be our puppet performers. It would be actors.
Sure.
Well, I have two stories. And the Nathan Lane one I think I've told. And again, it's not sad and it has a happy ending. And the other one is just how the nightmare world of doing puppet stuff for cheap. So I'll do that one. We did Turkey Hollow up in Canada and we had no sets. They didn't let us, we had no budget for set. It was under $3 million movie. And, our budget for creatures was like $180,000, $200,000 because it just was a small budget. So we had the scene where they're supposed to be eating the rock-made footing of a building to rescue these kids inside because these creatures eat rocks. Well, we couldn't build a set on a stage. It was supposed to be outdoors. So I said, well, the only thing we can do is dig a 6-foot deep pit and make sure, and then cover it with boards and dirt and make it just look like, and then put 4 holes so the puppeteer's arms could be. Well, it turned out the ground was really hard. So they can only dig like a 4-foot, because I wanted them standing. So they can only dig like a 4-foot deep pit in the amount of time we were given, because they couldn't bring a bulldozer in because it was private property, and anyway, blah, blah, blah. So the one set we got to build was this outdoor shed that had this rock footing. So I buried 4 or 5 puppeteers. I have pictures of this underground. We put them in a 4-foot deep by 6-foot or 7-foot deep pit, covered it with plywood boards. We had holes at the back end, so there was at least some fresh air coming in, and holes for their arms, but they had to puppeteer backwards. So they're laying on their backs like this and eating pretending to eat these rocks. And I think it's funny now, but I felt for them, but there was no other way to do it. I mean, with the schedule and budget. So that was definitely puppeteers tears.
Yes.
We gave them dust masks and goggles.
What's tough about that then too is that from a puppeteer brain standpoint, the monitor is not flipped anymore. It's actually then
we usually because
when you perform backwards like that and then you're watching the monitor, everything's then looking the right way.
Yeah.
And
I don't know if we normally flip it for Muppet performers, so it still might have been flipped. But again, they were puppeteering. They were looking at a monitor here. Right. And they were just trying to, I mean, luckily it wasn't a lot of acting. It was just kind of eating on the things. And then we shot close-ups. But that was a sad moment to be a puppeteer. Yeah. And then the happy story is with Nathan Lane, which started out scary when he was a guest star on Muppets Letters to Santa. He actually was was doing a favor for Stanley Tucci, who was originally going to be in that role as the TSA agent.
Oh, wow.
And he had a family emergency and he couldn't do it. So Stanley's and Nathan's agent was the same person. So they said, how about Nathan Lane? I said, great. Nathan Lane's hilarious. So he came in, and this was like the day before. So it wasn't like he had weeks to prep or even. So he came in Thursday morning or something, and he comes in at like 7 for hair and makeup. And I always go greet any guest star just to say hi. I'm the director, if you have any questions. And he was terrified. He was like, hello. I'm like, hi, I'm Kirk. Thank you so much for doing this. And I'm the director, and I just didn't know if you have any questions. And he just goes, okay. I'm like, well, I mean, is there anything you want to know? Have you worked with puppets before? No. I'm like, all right. He says, I'm doing this as a favor. I'm like, I know. And we really, really appreciate that. And my head's going, what does he think's going to happen?
It's not a lobotomy.
And I said, well, yeah, I said, it's real easy. The guys are just, below frame. And he's like, okay. And I started laughing a little bit. I was like, okay. I said, oh, you just seem really nervous. And he's like, I'm doing this as a favor. I'm like, no, I get it. I said, look, it's going to be easy and fun and it won't be weird. He's like, okay. He was just so scared. So he came down on set and he's looking around at all the gear and the monitors. And I remember, I think it was Frank or Jim once said, when the guest stars are nervous and they come and look and see how hard everyone's working just to have a puppet, they kind of lose their self awareness and sort of get caught up in it. And so he had a scene with Bill Beretta as Bobo, who was one of my favorite characters. And after about 2 takes, he just was having a ball. He was ad-libbing and just playing with Bobo, and he lost all that nervousness. And it was one of my favorite scenes in the movie because he just loved having a comedy partner who, and Bill's amazing at riffing. Oh, yeah. And they just had a ball. I was like, oh my God, I want to do a movie. I want to do, a buddy picture with Bobo and Nathan Lane. So yeah, that was a happy story that started out. I thought I was going to cry. I ended up having a ball.
That's amazing.
Well, and the ding ding stuff with the tricycle or the bicycle.
That was all ad-lib.
That was amazing. And
that was like the little bell that went ding ding ding, and the bell was like ding ding ding.
And what's wild too is that I think he did Sesame Street too, which is like all the more strange.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think so. I could be wrong about
Earlier or later? We shot that in
before.
Okay. I guess it was because he was just thrown into it.
Sure,
You know, it was
sure.
the day before. He did it, and he was great, and it worked out. But he was so nervous in the beginning, and that had never seen that before. That threw me. So I thought I was going to be the one tearing up, going, "Oh my God, I've got an amazing comedy talent," and he's terrified, and like, what's going to happen?
Wow.
I don't know. Yeah, I guess I don't have a lot of sad
that's
stories.
great.
with
That's
that's
those
amazing.
are two perfect ones. So now, what's the best way for people to get in contact with you if they want a consultation?
around the neck and shoulders. Just kind of grab me and start rubbing. It's the best way for me.
That's right.
I mean, that we can say on camera.
We have to stay
no,
6 feet away, Kirk.
Exactly. Well, we are. We're 6,000 miles away. Well, the best way is just through Facebook or Instagram or Twitter. I'm Kirk R. Thatcher at, I think, all of them. Or yeah, Kirk R. Thatcher. Don't forget the R in the middle. I'm open on Facebook. I have
Instagram,
I'm getting
Twitter.
close to 5,000 friends. Twitter is Kirk R. Thatcher, and Instagram Kirk R. Thatcher.
Wonderful.
And I'm trying to be better at posting stuff. I mean, sometimes like I baked banana bread on Instagram last week just because, you know, we're locked out.
Yeah.
But I've been posting more about my consulting. I'm probably going to do more. Post about the Dinosaur Funko Pops are coming out. I'll be signing them.
Cool.
Excellent.
I have to get the order first before I go and buy a bunch of them. So that'll be a new thing. And then the consulting gig, but at kirkrthatcher.com and / or / shop. And you can go right to the page where you can book the sessions.
And are you selling
Cool.
art too? I thought I saw.
Yeah, I'm selling original drawings commissions are more expensive than if I just draw, like I'll draw the baby dinosaur. I think it's $100. But like I just did one of somebody wanted the Swedish chef cooking with specific instruments and saying a particular phrase to a friend. So I think that was $100. They're like, so things like that with characters that I've worked with.
Yeah.
I don't do like draw Spider-Man, you know, I
Yeah.
don't do that. Yeah. I usually draw either Muppet characters, dinosaur characters, Star Wars, Gremlins, things I've worked on that I know. And I've got prints that are like $40, color prints of Christine McConnell's characters, well, at least Rankle and Rose. And then I've got a couple baby dinosaurs and a couple gremlins. And those are just colored prints, but then originals and commissions go up from there. Somebody actually just commissioned me to do a portrait of his wife, but not and I don't normally do that because I don't consider myself like a serious portrait artist, but he knows me and he wants me to do it. So I'm happy to do it. But,
And if the price is right.
That's right.
yeah, well, that was it. I'm like, dude, that's going to be, I originally wanted like an oil painting of his whole family and like a paperback cover. I'm like, that's going to be thousands of dollars. And he's like, oh, I was not expecting that. I said, well, I get it, but that's, you know, I know illustrators who do that and it's going to be thousands of dollars. I'm not trying to screw you. And so it's all come down to a black and white portrait of his wife. I'm like, okay, that I can do.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Well, again,
so yeah, but
well, thank you so
Kirk
much
R.
for
Thatcher.
coming on
Thank
the
you
show.
guys.
This was
This is so
wonderful.
much fun.
This is part one because you just are such a wealth of information. We'd love to have you back on again in the future.
Oh, well, I love you guys and this is fun. And, this timed out perfectly. I have an air conditioning guy coming in like 3 minutes. So
Perfect.
Excellent.
I must say, as I like to say, I'm nasty. I'm nasty. Oh, I'm sorry. Namaste. Namaste. I get it wrong. All right, guys. Thank you.
Excellent. Well, Kirk Thatcher, thank you for joining us on Puppeteers.
Sure. Thanks for having me. Bye.
See ya.
And also, if there's anything before we get started that you would rather us like not verge into, but we could always. Great.
My sex life. Don't talk about it. Because I'll talk about it. I just don't want you talking.
Okay, you got it. We'll be voyeurs as you discuss that.
There you go.
Perfect.
You should be like, really?
With the Emmy. No
With the
kidding.
Emmy. You sick puppy. All right.